it's so cool to watch other women feel like they've found home and they've found um, a place where they can say the things that they want to say about whatever's happening in their life, but also like that big, scary, delusional goal that they have been like keeping quiet in the back of their heart and telling nobody. It's like, no, let's put voice to it and be around people that are going to say to you, but how do we make it bigger?
Welcome to this week's episode of the Online Creator Podcast. My name is Kim, your podcast host, business mentor, and audio storyteller. This show is a space to inspire through conversations and community to help us keep connected, keep inspired, and keep moving towards our goals. Expect to hear honest conversations and real-life experiences from entrepreneurs at every stage of business and from a wide range of industries. Find your confidence, see what is possible, and build the legacy that you have dreamed of. Let's get started. Good morning, Laura. Thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today.
Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, it's been a minute since we chatted last, a little bit of hit and miss. We said we're both in a very busy season, and I'm so happy that you're here and we can start digging into this conversation today.
I am always up for a chat. So even if it takes us, even if we have to jump through a whole lot of hoops to make it happen, we're here and I cannot wait to get into the good stuff.
Perfect. Okay, so before we begin, please introduce yourself, who you are, what you do, and who you serve.
Yeah. So my name is Laura Sinclair. I mentor early stage female entrepreneurs, and that looks like a lot of different things. But my core belief is that you and your business deserve to be seen. And I do that through my mentorship, through my social media marketing agency, and my podcast, This Mother Means Business, which also has a community. So a lot of the work that I do is really around lifting up female entrepreneurs so that they can get their businesses in front of more audiences so that they can make the impact that they desire in the world. I am based out of Toronto, Canada. I have 2 small children, 7 and 3, and I think that's part of why life has been so chaotic and trying to get this booked is it's like there's just one thing after another. I got a sick kid home today, I got a sick kid home last week, and, part of the reason that I do so much and have so much conversation around motherhood and entrepreneurship is it's just they are 2 different things. It is very different building a business without kids as it is when you have them, certainly in a stage where they need me as much as they do.
Yeah, and if motherhood's taught me anything, it's that it's very unpredictable and we never know day to day what's going to happen, kind of like business.
Yeah.
It ebbs and flows with their needs and with your needs and all that good stuff. So, yes, let's dig into pivoting because I know recently, I mean, we are constantly pivoting in our businesses. It's just how we evolve, it's how we grow, it's how we learn. But you had recently posted 3 significant pivots in your business and in your throughout your career, basically.
Yeah.
And can you lean into that conversation a little bit and how you tackled those pivots as they kind of approach? Like, first of all, I guess, how did you even recognize that you were going through those changes?
Yeah, so I always love talking about this because when somebody asks me, like, "Tell me about yourself. Tell me about your career and your business and the things that you do." I'm always like, "Do you have a seatbelt and can you buckle in?" Because it does feel like this really kind of jarring, um, twist, and I'll take you through it. I think, before we dive into some of the specifics, the pivots that I've had in my life, some of them were forced upon me and others were by choice, and I think I actually have come to the belief though that if you don't make the pivot by choice, it's gonna be forced upon you. So it's gonna happen it's gonna happen either way. It's just you can do it the easy way or the hard way. And I've had it happen both ways. But for me, there's been, a few really big pivots in my life, in my career. And certainly, I have a corporate marketing background, started my career PR, working in digital marketing. And so pivot one for me was really actually leaving corporate. It was making the decision to take the golden handcuffs off and start working for myself. And, for me, that particular pivot was one that I got to make by choice. And it's a pivot that I think a lot of people think about making, whether, you're full time in your business or you want to go full time in your business or you want to quit your job and start a business, like whatever that is. But I was 26 years old and childless and had a partner with a union job, and I was very fiscally responsible in my 20s. That wasn't very scary. So people will always say to me, how did you do it? How did you quit your job?" I was like, "It's not the same as if I were to be quitting my job today at 37 with 2 kids and a mortgage and a whole bunch of different responsibilities. So that was pivot one for me. Pivot one came from like a knowingness that I wanted something more for myself. It came from knowing that my marketing career would always be there if I wanted to go back. There was always going to be jobs in marketing. I could always go back and work in social media for somebody, like that was going to be fine. So that was one. And then pivot 2 happened for me in 2020, March of 2020. We all know this story, but to give you some back end, is March of 2020 when the world shut down for 2 weeks out of an abundance of caution. We know how the rest of that went. I was 8 weeks pregnant with my now almost 4-year-old son, and I owned a gym at the time, so I left my corporate job to run a gym. And here in Canada, gyms gyms didn't do so well. We had a bit of a hard time, but previously, the year before 2019, and this is where this whole thing about you're either gonna be forced into it or it's gonna or you can choose it. Previously, I had thought about closing the gym, but I wasn't ready. I was like, I don't know. This is my whole identity." I knew that I didn't want to, um, work in the gym anymore. I liked working on the gym, but I sort of had this feeling that there was more for me, but I very much felt like I was standing on the edge of a cliff looking down and, like, had no idea what was down there, and I wasn't in a place where I was ready to jump. I didn't really know what was gonna be there. And so that would have been like the pivoting by choice. But then COVID happened, which happened to all of us. But for me, it was very much this being forced into having to look at my life and look at how I was spending my time and what I wanted moving forward in this really new way. And so for me, we went from 220 members at our gym to about 112 very quickly. And I didn't have financial backers or VC capital or anything. It's just, me and my husband running this business. So we made a decision at the end of 2020 to close the gym and a 3-month-old baby at home because it just wasn't what was going to make sense for our life. And that was the pivot, one of the pivots I was forced into. That was the one where it was like, if I had made that in 2019, I probably could have sold my gym, probably was super profitable. It would have been a lot smoother. The gym would probably still be running because it would have gone to an owner that had like just invested and they weren't going to close it. Right. But no, I waited. I waited for to be forced into that pivot where and I don't regret it, it just is, right? Where I didn't have a buyer, so I ended up selling off all the gym equipment, having to walk away on this tight timeline and not really having a plan at all. And so that was number 2. And then number 3 for me has been a bit of a shift away from, where I started my online business, which came from a place of I had a 3-month-old at home. I needed to figure out a way to make money. And so I did the thing that was easiest for me. And the thing that was easiest for me in my business was teaching small business owners how to use social media. That was easy. I knew that. That was the thing that I had done for the 10 years prior in my corporate career. It's a thing that I had done to build my gym up to where it was. And then really just being able to be like, you know what, this actually isn't what is for me long term. So this one I got to make by choice as well, which is better. Make them by choice. Don't get forced into them. I mean, the pivot's gonna be the pivot either way, but certainly the experience is different when you get to choose, and so for me, really shifting away from just having these social media conversations into one that's really about, like, holistic business ownership. Yes, I'm a strategy person, and yes, we talk about that. So, instead of saying, like, "Kim, we're gonna do XYZ thing for you so that you can grow your business," and then I wait and you come back and I'm like, "Kim, did you do it?" And you're like, "Well, no." "Well, why not?" "Why not, Kim?" Say, "Well, because, this reason and that reason, and this feels scary and that feels scary." And so it's like getting over the hurdle. And so the work that I do now is really about the strategy piece, but also helping women start to ask for what it is that they need in the world and start to really take up the space that they deserve to take up because there is quite a large mental hurdle that I think sometimes we don't talk about as marketing strategists, especially when we're dealing with founders, solopreneurs, people that are really the face of their business and having to show up in that way. So that's my like very long-winded 7-minute answer on those pivots, but those are the 3 biggest ones for sure.
No, I think they're all so interesting because I think you mentioned that in your 20s, when you were like, it was an easy decision, it still takes self awareness. Because I
Yeah.
remember what I was like in my 20s. And when I got that first job, like you say, the golden handcuffs, I had a union job for 20 years. It
Yeah.
was very safe. And when you're starting out in your 20s and you are anticipating all the things that you are saving for and doing, entrepreneurship
Sure.
wasn't even like a part of the idea. So being self-aware, I think is still like really huge. You were able to be riskier, I guess.
Yeah.
But did you have anybody around you that modeled this kind of behavior that it was okay to take a leap and believe in yourself? Or was your
No.
partner really like supportive? Like how did you even from that
No,
age?
so I've always kinda colored outside the lines a little bit, although I really, like, I think about growing up, like, yes, I colored outside the lines, but I also, like, really subscribed to what was prescribed to me, right? Like, you go to school, you get good grades, you go to university, you get your diploma, and then you go work for someone else, and that's your life, and I did that, right? Like, I checked that off, but I was always, like, deeply uncomfortable. I was always looking for the next thing. I was regularly bored. I was the type of person that would show up for my 9 to 5 job, get everything I needed to get done before noon, and then I would just be, like, sitting at my desk. And some of that is because, like, I have a really high capacity to execute and to do things, but I was just, like, I was never really challenged in a way that, like, felt good for me. And so when I was quite young, and so I know I really wanted my parents' approval because I had subscribed to what they told me I was supposed to do. And so looking for my parents' approval was something that I know that I really wanted, and they were hesitantly supportive. They weren't like, "Yeah, go for it." But I don't know, like, I just had proven to myself, I guess, in my 20s that there had been some moments in my career. I got fired early in my career, and I was just in a situation where, like, myself the woman that hired me and I were just not gonna be compatible, and I look back now and I can joke and be like, "Well, that's because you were a terrible employee, Laura," because I have an entrepreneurial mindset, right? We don't make for great employees, but also this particular woman sort of made it her mission to be awful to me as possible, and for me, one of the things that I am so proud of that version of myself is I got fired, and I think I was fired on, like, a Monday, and I think I went home that afternoon and I wrote down the names of every single person that I had built a relationship with in my career up to that point that I thought would give me a job. So I got fired Monday and I had another job by Thursday. And just by reaching out to my network of, like, who do I think would hire me, and just, like, reaching out to everyone, being like, "Hey, so here's what happened. Like, full disclosure, this is what just happened to me. Do you know of or are anyone or are you hiring?" So I had the skill to be really scrappy. I've always been scrappy. And so I think, if I can go back to that version of myself in that moment, I knew because I had already been through that. I lost my job and then found a job so quickly because I'm good at the work that I do. I mean, you can tell the boss, the woman that fired me, that, but all the other people that I reached out to that made it possible for me to, land back on my feet, I did know that I had the ability to land back on my feet no matter what. I think mentally gave myself a year. I was like, I'm going to give myself a year here. And if at the end of this year, I need to once again write the list of everybody that I know that I think would give me a job, that's what I'll do, and I'll land on my feet. And so I think one of the skills that I've had, I think some of it's probably just not inherently who I am, is just being really scrappy and, like, knowing deep down I'm gonna figure it out.
Yeah, I can relate to that so much because I think we do come from a generation of parents that, told us and like you said, prescribed. I love how you say that because it's so true. You go to school, you get that degree or diploma, and then you get that job and you stay in that job until you pull out your max pension and then you get that mortgage and you work hard until you pay off that mortgage. But I don't really know if that is the way that life has to be. And I think, having kids at different stages in our lives, like right now, I have two older children that are just kind of entering this next stage of what is possible.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to do everything in my power to show them what is possible outside of the lines. Because as
Yeah.
much as post-secondary school is so beneficial, and I will never not recommend that, I just think there's so many other opportunities and ways to be able to live our lives.
Especially now. Like,
Yeah.
I think about being in like, having my first BlackBerry, right? Like, we didn't have social media. I remember being in PR school and thinking I was the coolest because I had a BlackBerry that, like if you're listening to this and you had a BlackBerry, you know what I'm talking about. If you haven't, you're too young for a BlackBerry, like, it's fine. But, like, we didn't have the access. I'm 37 years old, and I think about, no, that was never presented to me as an option when I was coming out of school, whether that was pre-university, post-university, because it wasn't an option, right? Like, when we think about how small the world's become, how much opportunity there is for building business, whether it's, I'm talking online business, whether it's service business or an agency or done for you or wellness business or product-based business, like there's digital courses, like none of that was a thing when I was in that position to say like, hey, you know what, maybe I want something different. Entrepreneurship, I thought coming out of university meant like I needed venture capital. I needed to be Sarah Blakely. Like I needed to invent Spanx. Like I couldn't, that's what I thought that it was to be an entrepreneur. And this whole digital sphere, like the fact that you and I are even connecting today wouldn't have really been possible back then. And so I totally echo that with me. My kids are very young, but I want them to know that if you want to go to university, great, do it. But there's also this whole other world of places where you can go get skills and build something completely different and learn on the job and create a business, create a job for yourself if that's what you want to do. And yeah, it's just such a different landscape as far as what's available then and now. And I say that as if it's like we're talking like 50 years ago. Like we're not. We're talking about, if I were born 10 years later, I don't know, maybe I would have made different decisions.
Yeah, absolutely. When it comes to what is available, things have rapidly changed in the last few years, like insanely. But even thinking with the clients that you work with now and how I approached my degree, like I had a general kines degree. So when I graduated, I was like, I had these ideas, but I also had to be really creative with what opportunities were out there for me within the community that I chose to live in, because that
Yeah.
also, you know, set parameters and limitations. But I was thinking outside of the box, but I wasn't really thinking that I was an entrepreneur or could possibly be, not just because of the time, but because I don't know, there was just so many things because I didn't have people surrounded in my vortex that were entrepreneurs and were thinking that way. Even though I was slightly going, what else is possible? What can I
Yeah.
do? Because I think we all have that itch and we all are like generating constant ideas. And I think it's funny how I never thought that was maybe a bit of a sign that I could try and things could be possible. Workplay is the last branding solution you will ever need. Your Workplay team is your brand photographer, your brand designer, social media manager, and your creative direction bestie. Here to make your Pinterest board dreams a reality with one system, one team, and one flat monthly fee under $500. And no, there's no catch. Your brand is your power. Workplay wants to help you create it fiercely. DM me on Instagram, Workplay, to learn more. So, with the entrepreneurs that you work with now, because I know you really focus in on women, and I love that you support women because I think we do need to empower each other and support each other way more. What are you seeing as some things that are holding us back?
Yeah. How long we got? No.
Yeah.
A lot of it is these external stories, right? It's that stuff. It's like the BS that we've filled our own heads with or other people's heads. Other people have told us that lives in our heads. Like sometimes when a client will say something to me, I can't do this because XYZ. What I'll say to them is like, whose voice is that? Like whose story is that? Who and sometimes it's mom, sometimes it's dad, sometimes it's husband, boyfriend, or this friend or the teacher or this boss that, made me feel like I couldn't do that. But a lot of it is this like external um worthiness piece that comes into play, right? Like, let's be honest, the sort of steps to building a business are not complicated, right? And, like, you might be anyone's listening to me like, "What are you talking about?" But, like, the steps are the steps. It's like idea to offer, now you have to build brand, do marketing, figure out sales, like, I realize we're talking in broad strokes, but it's our brains that really start to make this complicated, right? So we start to layer in these emotions and this fear shows up and imposter syndrome and not wanting to take up space and like, what if it's too much? What if somebody has, thinks poorly of me or what they make fun of me, right? Like it's all of these external pieces that I see with women so much more than my male clients. And I do have some male clients. They like to every now and then I get a, "Hey, do you work with men?" sort of note. And the answer is yes, but I don't see that with them as much, right? Some of the men that I work with have had trouble with, the idea of like reaching out to somebody and being like, "Hey, Kim, could I come on your podcast?" Right? Like there's fear there. But I think so much of it is really this like external fear of being too much or not enough even, right? Like if more women would just like live in their power, would just do the thing without fear of judgment, would ask for what it is that they actually want and need in this world, it would be wild what would happen as far as our ability to like produce income and like kind of take over the world, if I'm honest.
Absolutely. What does community mean to you, and how do you build that in with the clients that you work with and the value of it?
Yeah, community is everything. I used to say entrepreneurship is lonely. And then someone challenged me and was like, no, entrepreneurship is only as lonely as you make it. And I've held on to that because it is really true. When you choose entrepreneurship, you are, and I've had people on my podcast that are psychologists that have confirmed this. So I'm not just making this up, but you are predisposing yourself to mental health related struggles, stress, all those things I just talked about. Right. And so that can feel really hard when you're alone, if you feel like you're alone. And so community for me has been something that kind of happened by accident, I'll be honest. I didn't start my business being like, "I'm gonna build a community." For me, it just sort of happened organically where these women were coming into my world, whether they were hiring me for coaching or coming into one of my programs. And then I was like, "Man, this person should really be friends. Like they would love each other. I'm getting to talk to them one on one." So then I'm connecting them. And then they're connecting to other people, and some of them are becoming, like, best friends in real life, and then there are these referral partnerships, and you just start to see how this, like just starts to feel like this warm, fuzzy little, like, orb surrounding, like, these women who are building themselves up and building each other up, and so for me, like, when I think about my why in my business and, my individual why sure is, like, freedom and giving my kids the lifestyle they deserve and but, like, my true like, the impact that I wanna create in this world is really about creating spaces where women can hold each other up and feel safe together in community and see how much strength that there is in community, and that's something that I lacked for a lot of my life, and being able to do that now in my business is the best, most healing thing for me selfishly ever, but it's so cool to watch other women feel like they've found home and they've found, um, a place where they can say the things that they wanna say about whatever's happening in their life, but also, like, that big, scary, delusional goal that they have been, like, keeping quiet in the back of their heart and telling nobody. It's like, "No, let's put voice to it and be around people that are gonna say to you, like, 'But how do we make it bigger?' Not, 'Well, that's not possible.'"
Challenge you in the best way possible. And the group that you have right now, are they local, like to the community? Do you meet in person, or is it mainly online?
So it's mainly online. I think one day I would love for there to be enough people that we could do more in person. I do a little bit of in person. I host dinners actually here in my community, which are super fun. But my this Mother Means Business community is women all over the world. And one day my goal, and we'll be talking about big hairy Delulu goals, is to have meetups around the world for women that are part of the community and wanna come together and be in a space that's safe. So that's a long-term goal, and I also run a mastermind, it's an intimate mastermind and women around the world for that. So there are a lot of local women to me, so I've gotten lucky that way, but I do have women all over the place.
Well, I think it's important for all of us to find space because not all of us live in bigger centers, right?
Yeah,
And the people, the gems that I have met in some of these groups are like exactly what you described. They're
yeah.
amazing. They're inspiring, they motivate, they challenge. And I think that in order for us to grow, we need to see what's possible within others as well. And I think that's really an important piece to this because you're right. I think I love that quote that you said that it's only as lonely as you make it to be. So we all have the possibilities within ourselves to find, if we don't have our own group, to be able to find something out there.
Yeah, I mean,
Mm.
just this morning, so I have the community that I've created that I sort of host and lead. But I also have my own community that I've intentionally built of my own peers. And so just yesterday, I reached out to a peer and I said, "Hey, I'm having a bit of like a sticky day. I'm like stuck in something. Do you have any chance you have half an hour tomorrow?" Her response was, "Yeah." So this morning, I got on a call with a friend, a peer, and just was like, "Hey, here's the thing that I'm stuck with. Can you help me jam out on this?" So it's like as much about creating community for me as it is like being within the community. And so I don't have to sit by myself and then cry, which I do. Let's just be clear about that. There are still days where I'm gonna sit by myself and cry and I'm gonna phone a friend, right? And these are like friends that I've met on the internet. This is not like the woman that lives next door. This is a person, these are people that I've paid the money to join masterminds and met in masterminds or have found on the internet through communities that I've joined, or even sometimes it's people that I've found on social media that I'm like, "Wow, you're really cool. Can we please be friends?"
Yeah, absolutely. And I was actually trying to reverse engineer how we met. And I thought it was from Threads, but it isn't. It's from somebody else that actually
Was
lives
it?
in, I'm pretty sure well, actually, I don't know where she lives. I think she might live in the state, but she referred us together. She connected us. And I was like, oh
Okay.
my God, that's so cool. Right. And I met her
Yeah.
on a coffee chat
Yeah.
with a
I
bunch
meet
of
a I make
people.
a lot of friends on Threads. I love Threads. It's my
Yeah,
favorite place
Threads
on
is
the
so
internet,
cool.
actually.
It is.
It's
It's
so cool.
kind of a different beast. Like it's totally
It's a
different
whole
than
other thing.
traditional. But yeah, it's so
Yeah,
cool. It's so cool. I've met some amazing people on there.
me
Let's
too.
lean into before so we're this time and it's going way too
Okay.
fast with you here, but there's so much crap online that we see.
Yeah. Mm.
How do you move past that? What are some strategies or things that you work on with your clients to help move past all of that BS
Yeah.
and to actually create businesses that really reflect who we are and the lifestyles that we want to live?
Yeah, it's funny when you asked me that question, my body just took like a big deep breath. I was like, yeah, there's a lot. It's a lot. And like, I want to, before we dive into this and talk about this, I want you to know that anybody listening that like I have got myself caught in some of this BS in the past. Where you like see stuff and you're like, okay, there must be something wrong with you. Like literally today, actually, I have emails in my inbox from emails I've subscribed to. One of them says, "Not at 10K months yet?" Question mark. The other's like, "Still not at 20K months." And I'm like, are we still talking to people? We got to stop talking to people this way. This is not the internet is going to make you feel like you are doing something wrong. There are people online, fortunately not on Threads, but on a lot of these platforms who are building their businesses by making you feel less than. That is their entire marketing strategy, right? It's like there's something wrong with you and I'll tell you what it is and how to fix it. And that can be really jarring. And certainly for me, I have found myself in moments I'm like, there must be something wrong with me. Like this person must have the answers. And I still catch myself in it to this day because we're all strivers, right? We all want more. And so if somebody's like, I know what's wrong with you and I have more, it's like that can feel really, really magnetic. But for me, with my clients, I think it's like really coming back to the root of fundamentals in business. And the best way that I can explain this is I have a lot of people that have been coming to me this year that say, I started my online business in 2020, 2021, and things were great. I was posting online and people would just message me on Instagram and they would buy from me or they click the link. Like I was just crushing it. And this year, 2023 was like a little quiet and 2024 has been really hard. And I'll say, "Okay, like, do you have it like, what are you doing to create lead nurture?" And they'll say, "Well, what's that?" I say, "Well, do you have an email list?" "No, I've never sent any emails." "Okay. Uh, do you have any way to nurture any of your leads?" So it's like, "Well, no." "Okay, well, how are you trying to get in front of new audiences?" "Well, I just post on Instagram." Like, "Okay." So that worked in 2020, 2021 because everybody was at home and looking for feeling spendy and a little bit bored as it turned out. But now we're kind of level setting, returning back to like more normal business, right? Like pre-COVID, the buyer cycle for a lot of things is not as short as people wouldn't want it to be. In product it is because product tends to be a little bit more impulsive, right? Whereas like you're not if you're a service provider, you're at an agency, one's gonna just like watch a reel and be like, I'm hiring that girl today. Like that's not how it works, right? So for me, one of the things I've been really doing with my clients is educating them on what I call the boring stuff or the foundations, right? The foundational marketing work that businesses actually need to have. And a lot of people just don't want to do because it's not sexy. It's not the use this one viral hook and your use this hook and go viral and your business will take off. It's like, no, I get that's what we want because it feels easier. But actually, what we need to do is to figure out, where are the channels? What is our top of the funnel activity that we're doing, right? Whether that's social media, are we getting on more podcasts? Are we doing some PR, right? And then how do we start to capture something from them, whether it's email or text or whatever, right? And then how are we gonna keep having building that relationship with them over time? And then when are we gonna sell to them and how? And, like and what are the inflection points, right? Like, this is the stuff that every business needs, right? But not everyone wants to do because it's not, the one thing I did to make $100,000 tomorrow. So, it's, my clients get it. They're hiring me because they get it, but it can be really distracting sometimes when you have that, like, shiny object thing and you see this reel that's like, making these false promises off of like, just do this one thing, and it's never one thing.
Yeah, and it's also I don't like saying balancing, but it kind of is when you're talking about that lead gen and being on social media so that you can generate those relationships versus, like, time off to be able to just work in your business because it can be
Yeah,
so jarring, like you said, there's so much noise, and so it's
so much.
hard to find times in the day because I easily get distracted. Oh my god, there's a
Yeah,
squirrel, like, I easily get distracted, and I think a lot of us do, right, and are because we're used to multitasking. So if something, sparks our interest, we take a look. And then all of a sudden we're getting sucked into the, you know, tunnel of finding all these other things. And instead of focusing on what's actually going to move the needle forward in our business, but
sure.
building that foundation in anything is so important. So I love that you do that. And also revisiting it, right? And I'm sure you work with
Yeah,
your clients on that too. Like that foundational stuff needs to be revisited because right at the beginning of our conversation, we talked about how life changes and
yeah,
that we pivot on the regular because we tend to have to sometimes. Whether it's kind of gently nudged on us or whether we're forced, our hands forced, or whether it's just the right time. But in order to make really good at what we're doing and to market ourselves, we have to look at our foundational stuff. I love that you use, and you mentioned it already, but that you use podcasting, audio in your business. Why audio and what do you like about it?
oh, I mean, I just love long form content in
Yeah.
general because I can talk forever. I am you know what, Kim? I I was talking about inner child for a while. I, as a kid, was always told to be quiet, and so I spent a lot of my life keeping my thoughts to myself. And in the last couple of years, I have realized that actually it's better if I just say my thoughts. And so somebody handed me a microphone and I just cannot stop. But I do really love the way that somebody can really get to know me. Like anybody that's listening to this right now, if they didn't vibe with me, they would have changed the app. They wouldn't be still listening to this episode. They would be like, okay, 5 or 10 minutes in, they would have known pretty quickly. And so being able to provide value to people in a way that's really powerful, but also to make a connection. I'm going to be for you or not for you. And that's perfect. I really love that. And I love podcasting for that. I love, in my own business, building community through my own podcast, but I also really love being a guest on other people's podcasts so that I can give value to their communities. And also, if they vibe with what it is that I do and want to come hang out a little bit in mine too, then that's totally a win.
Yeah, you could totally tell. It's interesting the conversations that I have with guests that have podcasts and that don't. There's just
Yeah.
a real natural flow to the conversation when someone's had some experience talking through this audio platform. But I love that you found that, and I love that you shared that story because that is why I started doing what I am doing. I want to amplify more voices because I feel
Yeah.
too many of
Yeah.
us have been shushed throughout our lives, told to be
Yeah.
quiet, and that's not okay with me. I think we need to hear more of our stories. We need to talk louder. all
I
those
do.
good things because, yeah, it's amazing what can happen when you start using your voice. So, if people want to find you, to be able to work with you in some capacity, what's the best way to find you?
So the best way to find me is on Threads or on Instagram at it's Laura Sinclair. I think I'm on Threads more than I'm on Instagram now, but send me a DM, say hi, shoot me a thread. Can you say that? Is that how you say it? Shoot me a thread? I don't know. Thread me a thread. Sew me a thread. But at it's Laura Sinclair, my website is www.laura-sinclair.com. If you want to learn more about my podcast and my community, you can also check out thismothermeansbusiness.com or on Instagram at thismothermeansbusiness.
I'll have all those good links in the show notes. But before I let you go, I love ending with a reflective question. And I would love to hear your perspective on what success means to you at this stage in life.
Success for me is freedom. And so for me, it's not just freedom financially, it's or freedom of time, it's freedom of my mind, freedom to create what I want to create in the world when I want to create it. And that's for me is always what I have been after and will continue to be after.
I have a feeling this won't be the last time or the last business
Mhm.
idea that you create. I can just see it in your eyes that you have so much more yet. And I'm so excited that our paths crossed and that I get to kind of walk alongside you in this journey because, you are the people in my world, in my life that inspire. And I know you will inspire others as well.
Thank you. I received that.
Thanks again for tuning into this week's episode of the Online Creator Podcast. If you haven't subscribed to the show yet, please do so on your favorite media player. And come check us out over on YouTube, where you'll have full access to our episodes on video there. You can check out the important links mentioned in today's episode in the show notes, and please join the conversation over on Instagram at May and James Co. I'll see you next week.